All right, friends. Well, welcome to our Tuesday Bible study. I'm grateful for all of us being here together. This is the 9th of June. We're looking ahead at the third Sunday after Pentecost in year A. And as is always a good place to begin, let's begin in prayer. The Lord be with you.
And also with you.
Let us pray. Keep, O Lord, your household, the church, in your steadfast faith and love, that through your grace we may proclaim your truth with boldness and minister your justice with compassion, for the sake of our Savior, Jesus Christ, who lives and reigns with you in the Holy Spirit, one God, now and forever. Amen. Well, we're making our way through this experience of Matthew, and I've really confused y'all, I think, because at the top of the page, I did not change this. Hold on, if I can get my little scroller. That's incorrect. This is the verse that these are the verses that we're going for. So, if y'all, I didn't end up changing that. So just to, try not to confuse you any more than I have to. So we're here in Matthew 9 through 10:23. But as you'll see, we kind of worked our way through the 26th verse of chapter 9 last Sunday. So just right after this is where we pick up the story today. And before I read this, I just want to say that sometimes the collect for the Sunday and the gospel reading don't really compute. But this is one of those Sundays where I think it's especially true because we're in year A, and so the collects actually line up a little bit better in year A than in B or C of our liturgical year. But this collect fits really well with our gospel reading. So hold that collect in your heart as we dive into Matthew chapters 9 and most of 10. Would somebody be willing
I'll try
to read? Okay.
Take a deep breath. Jesus went about all the cities and villages, teaching in their synagogues and proclaiming the good news of the kingdom, and curing every disease and every sickness. When he saw the crowds, he had compassion for them, because they were harassed and helpless, like sheep without a shepherd. Then he said to his disciples, "The harvest is plentiful, but the laborers are few. Therefore ask the Lord of the harvest to send out laborers into his harvest." Then Jesus summoned his 12 disciples and gave them authority over unclean spirits to cast them out and to cure every disease and every sickness. These are the names of the 12 apostles. First, Simon, also known as Peter, and his brother Andrew, James, son of Zebedee, and his brother John, Philip and Bartholomew, Thomas and Matthew the tax collector, James, son of Alphaeus, and Thaddeus, Simon the Canaanian, and Judas Iscariot, the one who betrayed him. These 12 Jesus sent out with the following instructions: "Go nowhere among the Gentiles, and enter no town of the Samaritans, but go rather to the lost sheep of the house of Israel. As you go, proclaim the good news. The kingdom of heaven has come near. Cure the sick, raise the dead, cleanse the lepers, cast out demons. You received without payment, give without payment. Take no gold or silver or copper in your belt, no bag for your journey, or 2 tunics, or sandals, or a staff, for laborers deserve their food. Whatever town or village you enter, find out who in it is worthy, and stay there until you leave. As you enter the house, greet it. If the house is worthy, let your peace come upon it. But if it is not worthy, let your peace return to you. If anyone will not welcome you or listen to your words, shake off the dust from your feet as you leave that house or town. Truly I tell you, it will be more tolerable for the land of Sodom and Gomorrah on the day of judgment than for that town. See, I'm sending you out like sheep into the midst of wolves. So be wise as serpents and innocent as doves. Beware of them, for they will hand you over to councils and flog you in their synagogues. And you will be dragged before governors and kings because of me, as a testimony to them and to the Gentiles. When they hand you over, do not worry about how you are to speak or what you are to say, for what you are to say will be given to you at that time. For it is not you who speak, but the Spirit of your Father speaking through you. Brother will betray brother to death, and a father his child, and children will rise against parents and have them put to death, and you will be hated by all because of my name. But the one who endures to the end will be saved. When they persecute you in one town, flee to the next. For truly I tell you, you will not have gone through all the towns of Israel before the Son of Man comes.
So for just a moment, wonder what word or phrase or image or a question that stands out to you. Just really, what did you notice? So just a moment of silence to kind of compose ourselves, and then we'll answer that question. All right, what did you notice?
The 12 fellows are all together.
Yes.
And he's giving them this, this is going to be your resume. All these things that you're going to do and things that are going to happen. And I'm sure somebody had to say, what have we got ourselves into?
That's right.
It's not going to be good. So it's going to be no payment and it's danger. Good gracious.
Yes. Well, and especially, that I know that at least one of them, probably most of them, maybe all of them, were under the impression that this movement would actually lead to Jesus becoming the king of Israel and defeating Rome. And so at least some of them are freedom fighter kind of people. So then to be asked to do this in service of this mission, it probably was like, what? This is not what I thought Jesus was all about. So yeah, it's doubly shocking because not only is it difficult, but I don't think it lines up with what they probably perceived was, the way that Jesus was going to lead them.
Yeah, to go be flogged, yeah.
Right. Yeah.
Well, I think maybe Jesus was testing them.
Yes. Of course. Yeah. And I don't know. Bronson, you may have an insight into this, but some of the things that we are listing here about father, against child, and brother will betray brother to death, and children will betray their parents.
Sadly, that happens.
It sadly happens still, but I think in Matthew's community it was happening at an alarming sort of rate. And so I think Matthew may be laying that in there because you will recall, and it's stated here in this passage, that Matthew's community is kind of the people of Israel. And that's who Matthew wanted to focus on, to get the lost sheep of the tribe of Israel. And so y'all can see that this is actually playing out in real time for Matthew's community. And yes, Jesus may have said something similar to this, but I almost think that Matthew's putting this in here for the benefit of his community to kind of urge them to keep going. And to see that, you know what, Jesus actually was calling us into some of these things that we're having to endure now. Because I bet they were getting flogged, and I bet they didn't know exactly, a generation after Jesus's death and resurrection, what are we really supposed to be doing? So we'll talk a little bit more about that when we go behind the world of the text. But
I think the one here said, the one who endures to the end will be saved.
yes,
That is the preacher and Matthew saying to the congregation,
keep going.
keep going.
Yeah.
Well, he's also sending it out to the Jewish community.
That's what I'm saying.
And
Yeah.
not the wider world.
Right. Specifically not the wider world.
Specifically, yes,
But
specifically
then
not.
don't go those other places.
Yeah.
Right,
Which is different than Luke and John and Paul and
right.
It's different from Matthew 28 too.
yeah, right. So at some point he says, nope, we heard that on Trinity Sunday, right? When go out to all the nations and proclaim the good news in my name and baptize in the name of the Father and the Son and the
When
Holy
did the
Spirit.
movement shift from aiming at Israel to the whole world? What went on there?
But I'm wondering for Matthew if even if in his own spiritual journey, the death and resurrection had this transformative effect of saying, okay, it's not actually just for us. It's not just for the people of Israel. You don't have to, because that was that tension between Peter and Paul. Do you have to become circumcised to then become part of the way of Christ? And eventually Paul's like, no, and Peter eventually figures out, okay, I can eat meat. I can, he gets a movie played on a big, read that story in Acts and tell me that there's not some sort of strange mystic interpretation of it, because it's just a wild story that he sees this essentially movie from God that he's supposed to eat with Gentiles, which means eating unclean meat. I mean, so yeah, the expansion of who the target audience is continues to grow, I think, for Matthew throughout the course of this gospel account. But he certainly was maybe giving a nod to his own congregation, so to speak.
I would think they were very confused by being led to break the rules they lived by.
Mm-hmm. Yes. And what else stands out to you? It's a lot of verses, so there's a lot here. So I'd be really interested to hear kind of where your heart focuses in on. We've said the 12, we said kind of the endurance till the end, some really hard things that the 12 are having to endure.
So what would decide whether the house was worthy? If the house is worthy,
I'm sorry,
let
but
your
what
peace
is,
come
what
upon
is
you.
the house under these circumstances?
Yeah.
It's not the building,
No, it's a household.
it's a
It's-
household.
yeah.
Right.
And I'm assuming that's the way you are treated when you come.
What kind of community is going on in that house?
House, yeah, with the community of the household.
The word every, like every disease,
Mm.
every sickness, curing. I know that he cured diseases, but I guess the word every kind of.
Yeah, that's
Well, and it ends
powerful.
with an unfulfilled promise of resurrection
Yeah.
also. Of second coming.
Of second
Sorry.
coming,
Of
right.
second coming, not resurrection, of second coming.
Yes. Well, this is where I'm always confused. Is Jesus talking about actually the first go around that he's
Yeah.
right?
Okay.
That the Son of Man, his nickname for himself, at least as we're given it in the gospel accounts, that feels like it's very loaded because Jesus himself says, I don't even know the time and the date of this ultimate, culmination of all things. So yeah, but that is an intriguing line, and I think through the ages, we have over the church and really kind of the church Catholic, and I'm playing with that. I don't know if it's uppercase C or lowercase c in this scenario, but we've kind of played with Matthew and John more than Mark and Luke. Those have been the emphasized gospel accounts that formed a lot of the theology of the church. And there's a lot here that is, seems very urgent. Like this is going to happen. This is about to happen. And I think in Luke and certainly in Mark, it's more, look, you're going to experience this. This is going to be this thing that you go out and you find Jesus coming to you in your Galilee, which is much more mysterious than these are the ways you're going to follow me, which Matthew kind of gives you more of the framework of what does discipleship look like. And that's great. But if you don't combine it with these other versions of the good news, I think it's kind of, you can flatten what it is to be a Christian into mere discipleship and not how do we expand our hearts, how do we include others. That's a lot of what Luke is, right? And eventually Matthew gets there, but it's not the emphasis throughout. All right, the thing that stood out to me, and I know I'm talking a lot, truly, I tell you, it would be more tolerable for the land of Sodom and Gomorrah on the day of judgment than for that town. And I want to go there, but I don't want to go there yet. So I'm teasing that because that's a loaded verse. There's a lot layered on there, and I think there's a lot layered on there incorrectly. So I want to correct that, but not yet. Not Matthew, our interpretation of Matthew. Yeah. All right. Shall we read this passage again? And y'all are going to continue to hear my voice. Okay. Yes, the message is, for those who don't know, a translation by Eugene Peterson, author of some wonderful books, including The Contemplative Pastor, which is, I don't know if you've ever read that. It has saved me multiple times from myself as a pastor. He translated all of this. He's a brilliant man who's now gone to the greater presence of God, but he served in churches. He never wanted to serve in a church that was a humongous. He was never a quote unquote steeplechaser, where you do y'all know that terminology, like the runners steeplechase, but like no steeplechasing, like trying to get the bigger and bigger and bigger steeple.
I don't like bigger churches for the Episcopal Church.
Yeah, well, and it's it's hard for me to understand how that doesn't become like a corporate model that looks a lot like corporate America. But I've worked in a larger sized church, and they were lovely people there. No shame about that. It's just not my calling.
This is the interpretation of Eugene who?
Peterson. Eugene Peterson. All right. So it's going to sound a little different. It's contemporary. It's colorful language. It's meant to provoke you. So if you're like, no, that doesn't sound right, that's exactly what he's trying to do. So. Then Jesus made a circuit of all the towns and villages. He taught in their meeting places, reported kingdom news, and healed their diseased bodies, healed their bruised and hurt lives. When he looked out over the crowds, his heart broke. So confused and aimless they were, like sheep with no shepherd. "What a huge harvest," he said to his disciples. "How few workers. On your knees and pray for harvest hands." The prayer was no sooner prayed than it was answered. Jesus called 12 of his followers and sent them into the ripe fields. He gave them power to kick out the evil spirits and to tenderly care for the bruised and hurt lives. This is the list of the 12 he sent. Simon, they called him Peter or Rock, Andrew, his brother, James, Zebedee's son, John, his brother, Philip, Bartholomew, Thomas, Matthew, the taxman, James, son of Alphaeus, Thaddeus, Simon, the Canaanite, Judas Iscariot, who later turned on him. Jesus sent his 12 harvest hands out with this charge. Don't begin by traveling to some far-off place to convert unbelievers. And don't try to be dramatic by tackling some public enemy. Go to the lost, confused people right here in the neighborhood. Tell them that the kingdom is here. Bring health to the sick. Raise the dead. Touch the untouchables. Kick out the demons. You have been treated generously, so live generously. Don't think you have to put on a fundraising campaign before you start. You don't need a lot of equipment. You are the equipment. And all you need to keep that going is 3 meals a day. Travel light. When you enter a town or village, don't insist on staying in a luxury inn. Get a modest place with some modest people and be content there until you leave. When you knock on a door, be courteous in your greeting. If they welcome you, be gentle in your conversation. If they don't welcome you, quietly withdraw. Don't make a scene. Shrug your shoulders and be on your way. You can be sure that on Judgment Day, they'll be mighty sorry, but it's no concern of yours now. Stay alert. This is hazardous work I'm assigning you. You are going to be like sheep running through... I had to scroll that up. You will be like sheep running through a wolf pack, so don't call attention to yourselves. Be as shrewd as a snake, inoffensive as a dove. Don't be naive. Some people will question your motives. Others will smear your reputation just because you believe in me. Don't be upset when they haul you before the civic authorities. Without knowing it, they've done you and me a favor, given you a platform for preaching the kingdom news. And don't worry about what you'll say or how you'll say it. The right words will be there. The Spirit of your Father will supply the words after a turning point. Jesus' ministry becomes the disciples' mission. Jesus sees the crowd as harassed and helpless like sheep without a shepherd. This draws on the biblical image of failed shepherds. Leaders who do not care for God's people. The 12 apostles symbolize the renewal of Israel. They are sent first to the lost sheep of the house of Israel. Later in Matthew, the mission expands to all nations. Jesus gives the disciples authority, but not to dominate. He gives authority to heal, restore, cleanse, liberate, and proclaim the kingdom.
I like this one.
I do too.
Why is it that some of the disciples are like specifically named where they're from and some are just, named? Just curious about that.
I think it's probably because one of a few things. Either they're known in the community, like maybe in Matthew, some of these people, the tax man was the person writing this. At least that's what we believe. So some of these characters might have been known, and so they wanted to make the actual emotional connection to, hey, y'all know this person. That's one of the thoughts I have. And it might also be that their mission and ministry is so well known. I mean, we celebrated on May 1st the feast of Philip and James the Lesser. And those are two kind of unknown sorts of, people. It's not, we don't know a ton of their story, as opposed to some of the other ones that we do know. This is how they died as a martyr. This is how they proclaimed the good news. This is what, their works were. So it's not to say that they weren't part of the movement, but perhaps they weren't as well known in their ministry, which is sort of like a church, right? Like there are people here that work behind the scenes that most everybody doesn't know the work that they're doing, but they're doing it quietly, faithfully. And if they were to go somewhere else, we'd all be, we'd sorely miss them. But some people have that public-facing ministry, some people don't.
There's some possibility that the list of the 12 was not really known. Some of their different evangelists have different names.
Right.
And so that maybe the 12 outside of Jesus's immediate influence was not very big.
Yeah.
I don't know. Could be.
Yeah, and I love the who's the add-on disciple? Barnabas? No. Who's the one we add? We drew lots.
Yeah, Matthias.
Matthias. So, that's
He's never mentioned again.
because he's supposed to be us. Like we're Matthias. Like that's the concept. And I'm going to use another analogy like that I've used before in this class in just a little bit when we make connections to other readings. All right, so
Well, can it just be because there are many Jameses and you want to
Yeah.
identify which James
Yeah.
it is?
Yeah, of course. Right.
I mean, wouldn't it be nice if we knew who all the Marys were?
Right.
when they were-
Oh my gosh, yes. I mean, yeah, and it's unclear with Mary of Bethany and Mary of Magdala and Mary the mother of Jesus, and was there another Mary, or were they all the same Mary? What? I mean, obviously not.
The mother of Jesus might have had a sister named Mary.
Right. So it's just, it seems very common, like there's some common names like James and Mary. So I saw an infographic that progressed over time. It was the most popular boy's name in, like a baby's name for boys in Alabama. And for a while it was, William or something like that. But James is like here compared to like every other name right now. So, and like I keep running into parents that have named their child James. And I'm like, okay. I mean, that's a great name. You can name your child after two disciples in one swoop. So I feel like maybe that's why in Alabama.
It goes through phases.
It does. It's so funny to see it.
I've known a Joshua in my life
Yeah.
before we named our son Joshua.
Mhm.
It was like that was the beginning of this wave.
Big peak, yeah. I had like 3 kids in my class named Joshua.
When Christopher was born, he was Christopher.
Yeah.
The next one was Christopher, and the next one was ABC. There were 3 Christophers that same morning.
Oh yeah. Oh, that's right. Yes.
That was wild.
Yeah. All right. So, what do you hear in this? What's God, asking of us? What are we hearing God proclaim to us in this moment?
He says, don't worry about what you'll say or do. So rather than let them think they're not prepared, he lets them know right away that what they need to say will come to them.
Yeah.
Because I don't think I would want to be sent somewhere to do something that I thought, I can't do that, never. Yeah, so that was very kind, I think.
Well, in both cases, isn't the harvest a metaphor?
Of course.
Okay.
Yeah.
We're talking about how few workers there are and sending them out to find more workers.
Right. Yeah, and I think that the way he's contemporized the kind of way to approach these interactions feels much more connected to, I think, our contemporary church's experience of how we are trying to build the church. It's not, it's not as dramatic in some ways, right? Like, especially in the the South, which still has this remnant of Christendom and it's still this remnant of the Bible Belt, even though all of that is even changing. Like, it's still not a very controversial thing to go and talk to somebody about your church. It's usually the second question that somebody asks you in Alabama, right? The first is, where are your people? Where are your people from? You know, where are your family from? And then who you are, and then where you go to church. Like, that's the second one. Oh, and also, yes, Alabama or Auburn has to come in there somewhere. And then now we have all these people that are like, I don't pull for either. And it's like, you pull for Indiana?
Of course, and LSU.
At LSU? I know.
I like how he said, be gentle in your conversation. If they don't welcome you, just quietly withdraw. Don't
Yeah.
make a scene. I like.
Yeah.
That was
So
just,
don't get into an
that's how I
argument.
picture Jesus being.
Yes. Yes.
And sharing. That's how
Yes.
I know I might be.
That's the
naive,
Episcopal
which they said,
Jesus.
don't be
That's certainly
naive.
Episcopal Jesus,
Yeah,
yes.
That's my Jesus.
No
Yeah.
drama.
Yeah.
But it says it's not success you are after, but
Yeah.
survival.
It's so,
That
yeah.
seems to be so contrary to what Jesus really, in the traditional interpretation, he's not sending us out to survive, but to give testimony or witness.
Yeah.
Well, doesn't that go back to the period of time that Matthew,
Right.
or whoever that is,
Yeah.
Well,
writing this?
I don't see that in the NRSV version,
Right.
though.
Yeah, I think that's an interpretive choice that Peterson made.
Maybe that's good advice. Though.
I think, well, and it's certainly it feels relevant now. It feels relevant as we kind of look around, and culturally, Christendom has fallen, at least in a national global sense, right? It's no longer hang a shingle and people will walk down the street and find the red doors of the Episcopal Church. We're a counterexample to that. We don't have red doors, and we can't even hang a shingle because our neighborhood association won't let us hang signs out on the street. So we're having to do it a little differently. And survival, I don't think always has to be seen as such a cutthroat thing. I think he's maybe even in that moment, if he was saying this, I'm just going to say that, okay, I'm going to imagine that Jesus could have said this to the disciples. Maybe he knows that the movement has to keep going beyond him. And so maybe he needs some of these leaders to survive.
Maybe survival means find a way to work within the system.
Yeah.
It's going to be tough.
Yeah.
But you can find a way.
Yeah. Well, yeah, I mean, and I don't know if he tells this parable in this gospel account as well, but, it makes me think of the shrewd manager who makes all these deals, right? Like sometimes the the workings of the church are not always cookie cutter. They're not always, a pie in the sky, kind of everything is sweet and we're going to get along with everybody. Sometimes it's the powers that be are working hard against us and we have to use subversive methods. But this is where I will push back against Peterson, because one of the things that he holds up as the three values that a contemplative pastor has to have is being subversive. Like, you can't always come at your congregation straight on. You can't always come at society straight on. You kind of have to go in almost with the Trojan horse mentality, not in a I'm seeing political ads with that used, and I'm really frustrated by it. But anyway, I won't go there. But the Trojan horse is a really helpful analogy for me, because that's how I think of preaching a lot of the time. Is it can start off as very innocuous, and then all of a sudden we've walked into some pretty deep waters. And if y'all are willing to wade into those waters with me, we can, I hope, deepen our own spirituality. But yeah, I could see Peterson wanting to kind of proclaim that and justify that with his interpretation here.
And I've accidentally thought about the person from Hunter Street that asked if we read the Bible. And I wish I had said, Yes, we don't just do sword drills, we read the word.
You wrestle with it.
Yeah, I mean, yeah. To any so just this is your survival kit if you're dealing with these kind of conversations. It could be with anybody. But the first thing you can say to the question, when were you saved? You can say 2,000 years ago on Calvary. That was sufficient for my salvation, and that can be the end of the conversation.
What about have you found Jesus?
Well, I pull up the Far Side cartoon when that happens, where somebody's knocking at the door. Somebody's knocking at the door. It's two men in ties. And then they come and they say, have you found Jesus? And Jesus is hiding behind the curtains in this person's house.
I didn't know it was like
Yeah, it's like, right. That's a good response.
Where is heaven? I got that feeling. Where is heaven? I said it's all around us.
Yeah, that's right.
It's waiting for us. It's everywhere.
Yeah, you can say eternal life has already begun. The kingdom has already broken into this world. And then finally, if somebody wants to question your interpretation of Holy Scripture, you can say, well, I take the Bible far too seriously to take it literally. And that will stop the conversation. Okay, so those are your canned answers for if you need to turn a conversation on its head and still be accurate in your theology. It'll scare them, and it'll also probably make them a little curious as to, well, wait a minute.
Yeah.
Now, if they have their defenses up, it's not going to matter. But if they don't, then you might have just, sent the blast into the middle of the Death Star that's going to blow everything up. Sorry, you're watching some Star Wars right now, if you couldn't tell. All right, so let's go forward into what's coming next, which is the worlds of the text. And we're going to go down a little bit and look at first the world of the text. So it's a major turning point. Jesus' ministry of teaching, proclaiming, healing, calling, and forgiving now expands not just to him. So he's been doing all this stuff and showing examples of this is what my ministry is all about. It's almost like when you're first working in a company, like you may work as a salesperson and then maybe eventually you move up into administration. And that's kind of what's happening here. Jesus has been showing the disciples, this is how I preach, this is how I heal, this is how I teach, this is how we feed each other, this is how we build community. Now you go do it. And that's always been the point of Jesus' ministry, is for the Son of God to come and show us how to pick up this ministry and be the hands and feet and heart of Christ, and to, with God's help, embody Christ in this world. But we get it really practically right here. And so he gives the 12 this authority to participate in his work. So they're going to continue in it. They're going to be ones that co-laborers, co-creators. Jesus is not absent from their ministry when he's not physically there, but it is something where they're getting to see, okay, how can I think like Jesus? How can I be like Jesus? How can I create like Jesus? Which is really, I think, what the church is supposed to be doing. And we do it best by asking each other, what does that look like? I had a conversation this morning with diocesan staff member Cameron Nations, who's helping us with this envisioning process that will start in a couple of weeks with a survey that I'm putting together. And this is the sort of thing we're going to be wondering about. How do you see the work of Jesus already happening here, and how do you want to see it magnified? Because that's really what we're supposed to be doing. Yes, it's a place where you are spiritually fed, and it should be, but it's also a place where you learn how to be a disciple, how you learn to be one of these learners that goes out and goes into the community with these sorts of answers that we were just talking about, to draw people in with curiosity, and to also not be a doormat that just says, oh well, yeah, your interpretation of Holy Scriptures is fine. When it's not, when it's troublesome, when it's toxic, when it's used as a weapon instead of as something good. So, major turning point for the disciples can be an inspiration for us. Jesus sees the crowds as harassed and helpless, like a sheep without a shepherd. So this is a callback. One of the, I do not remember which prophet it's from, so I apologize. But there's this reading that we often use. It's one of the suggested readings for an ordination that's about what bad shepherds and hired hands look like, as opposed to the good shepherd. And there's the problem of a sheep without a shepherd, but there's also the even bigger problem of having a nefarious, troublesome shepherd that's leading a flock into harm's way. And so this is kind of a statement, yes, that is about his movement, but it's also commentary on the movement that is going on simultaneously, or the movements that are going on simultaneously within that part of the world, which would include the polytheistic Roman view, or pagan Roman view is probably more accurate. It would include the kind of very orthodox priestly class, pharisaical, view of being an Israelite, being a person of Israel. Then there's the Sadducees, which is slightly different. Then there's the Zealots that really want to overthrow a lot of this. So, Jesus is speaking into a pluralistic society. We sometimes flatten it into, he's just speaking against the people of Israel. No, there's all these people, and he's intentionally trying to speak to the people of Israel in this moment. But by doing so, he's making political, pastoral, and theological claims in this moment. So he's saying, Jesus, I am the true shepherd, in contrast to the failed leaders who do not care for God's people. And that's something we can hold in tension. Because we saw in last week's gospel account, Jesus works with a synagogue leader who presumably Jesus admires enough to actually work with him and sees faith in him. So Jesus is not condemning the religion of Judaism, not at all. And not even the way that Matthew portrays him. But there is this kind of desire, I think, to clarify the mission that Jesus is having to do, and it's delicate. It's still delicate. So does that make sense? He's really stepping into almost a minefield, and he's asking, obviously, his disciples to do the same, which they're not fully divine like he is, fully divine and fully human. They're fully human, and only divinely inspired there. All right, so the sending of the 12 is symbolic, and yet it's also sort of like what I'm just hinting at here. It's sobering. Jesus is renewing Israel and beginning a mission that will later expand to all nations, but he warns the disciples that faithful mission will involve vulnerability, resistance, betrayal, and danger. And I know that we've enjoyed this long time where the church has been the kind of has gone hand in hand with our civic life, but it feels like I'm not talking about just the United States. It feels like globally the church is now having to respond to culture instead of we're in lockstep as part of the culture. So this is pertinent to us because it's going to require us, if we're going to be faithful, to be vulnerable and to be resistant and to be, open to betrayal, which is part of being vulnerable. And, that's the danger is also part of being vulnerable. So one way to summarize this is, I believe authentic discipleship now and way back when should come with a warning label. Like it's not something that is for the faint of heart. And yet when we are faint of heart, because all of us are, God is with us and God is in that vulnerability, because that's who Jesus was, especially on the cross. That makes sense? Okay.
If we had a big crucifix out by the front door,
Yeah.
then that would be sufficient warning.
Yeah, our Roman Catholic brethren don't have, or siblings, I'm going to be inclusive there, they don't have it all wrong. I prefer the triumphant sign of Christ the King, but a bloody crucifix is really, that's more realistic, and it's also more troubling. It's much more troubling when we see that image, and not just to be grotesque, but to help us to see this often cost people their lives throughout the ages, not just when in Jesus' age, but especially during these big shifts. And before COVID, we talked about it as this kind of emerging church. I was talking to our former Bishop Keith Sloan about this, and he was so sweet to spend some time with me at Kristen Blackerby's ordination. And he shared with me, he said the pandemic really did something that accelerated that and also blew it up. Because we're not talking about an organized idea of the emergent church. It's just happening. It's like happening in all these different ways. That's COVID kind of broke loose a lot of the bounds, and we still don't know the ramification of all of that, because the community BC before COVID is not the community AC after COVID. All right, can we move to the world of the text? Here's the movement. Jesus teaches, proclaims, heals. Jesus sees the crowds and has compassion. Compassion is just, it's one of these things that is so prevalent in Matthew's gospel account. And it's something that I think we can really hold up as maybe a value that we have here at Holy Apostles. I feel like we are a compassionate community. More so than I think any other church that I've been a part of. Jesus names the need. The harvest is plentiful, but the laborers are few. This is really good leadership tactics as well, because you present something that is a goal for a group of people, but it's also aspirational and kind of daring enough, bold enough to really attract people's attention, to get them to say, this is serious. If I'm committing to this, I'm committing to this seriously. And I think that's important when you're engaging in something this important. This is not a thing that I do on Sundays. This is a lifestyle that I live that also, includes my Sunday worship, because it helps me to be grounded in my faith.
Isn't that harder for us, say, in this country?
Yes.
We don't really have a lot of challenges to our faith. Well, we didn't have.
Mm-hmm.
When I came out of seminary, the future was golden.
Right.
I mean, in the late 50s and the 60s.
Oh, yeah.
It was just unlimited.
Yes.
And then in the 70s and 80s, it began to slow down.
Right. Yeah, and we've seen a decline in church membership, for us as a denomination, kind of just slightly, but over the years, it's been decline since the 70s and 80s.
We reported about 6 million
Yeah.
in 1960s.
Right.
But we're at 1.6 million
Yeah.
now, 1.4 million.
Yeah.
But also the Southern Baptist Church is losing them as well.
The population has increased a great deal.
Yes, exactly. Exactly. Yeah. And it's was so interesting, if we are going to say what's the emerging church, in the Episcopal Church, you may be surprised, maybe you're not surprised. The churches that are growing the most are churches that minister to primarily non-Anglo or a kind of mixed, kind of non-European population, like non-European Americans. It's people from Latin America, South America that have immigrated into the United States. It's people from the Pacific Islands that have immigrated into the United States. Those communities that are Episcopal expressions of a faith that also don't colonize the kind of faith, but actually live out that faith, respecting the dignity of a different culture, those are the places that are growing because, well, they need a community of faith. Like what you're saying, a lot of white people, I'm just going to maybe speak for myself, we become self-sufficient, right? We think we don't need God. We've got all these things. We've got all this modern convenience. And we forget that, no, every breath is contingent upon God's grace. And we need those reminders. And it's kind of hard for us, I think, often to get those reminders unless we put ourselves in a place where we're partnering with people that are more on the margins than we are. Because when we do that, we start to see how serious we need to take the gospel. Yeah.
Yeah, the Anglican communion around the world has shrunk a great deal.
Yeah.
Except
In the Southern Hemisphere.
the Southern Hemisphere. It is booming in Africa. I mean, there are more Anglicans in Africa in one diocese than in England.
Yeah. Right.
And they have, 50, 60, 80 dioceses in
Yeah.
Africa?
And then you compound that with what's the largest diocese in the Episcopal Church? I think it's the Diocese of Haiti, which is absolutely astounding to me. Because there's not that many people on that island. Half of an island. They split an island with the Dominican Republic. Yeah, it's half of an island. And yet all of them are Episcopalian. And we have to ask the question, why are these places growing? Well, they take this discipleship really seriously. When I spent time in Kenya, when I spent time in Haiti, when I spent time in Ecuador, the Episcopal Church was like, we have to be together to survive this crazy world, because in the developing world, the primary values that you're pursuing are survival and justice. And in the developed world, it is comfort and convenience. Rectify that with the gospel, because I cannot put those two together and say the gospel is supposed to make us all feel good and comfortable. And
You're not preaching a prosperity gospel?
I will never. So I don't want to conflict everybody every Sunday because I don't want to lose my job. But I do think we need some convicting sometimes. And I'm not pointing the finger. If I'm pointing the finger at y'all, the other 4 fingers should be pointing at me. Yeah, I say this not as one outside the system, but one squarely in it. We've got this plentiful harvest, but we're not really being, I think, serious enough. And I'm seeing it with, our younger generation, Gen Z. I don't know yet about Gen Alpha, but Gen Z, being drawn into a very kind of strict way of this is men in Gen Z. I'll say that. Let me clarify that. This is the specific way of being a disciple of Jesus, and they're flocking to the Roman Catholic, the Orthodox Church, because this is how you're a Christian. Follow these rules. In the Episcopal Church, we're a big tent. We have this kind of spread out nature, but I think if we start to focus more on what is Jesus telling us to do, that's how we're going to grow. It's not going to be by having the best program, or it's going to be by living as Christ lives, becoming the fragrant offering like Christ is to us. So Jesus calls and empowers the 12. We are called and empowered to do the same work. Jesus sends them to do this really hard work of proclamation, healing, raising. Like how intimidating is that we're called into resurrecting things, which doesn't necessarily mean people, but I would imagine that we in this congregation can think of times when we've had to let a ministry fallow or, lay fallow or die, and then something new comes up and is resurrected in its place, and we're almost like, wait, that couldn't have happened without that thing happening. And so we have to, I think, see the pattern around us, including that there's resurrection in everything we're doing. Cleansing, I think that's kind of that confessing and coming back to God. It's, if you're looking at our baptismal covenant, that's when you realize you will turn back towards God. And then casting out, that's harder, but I think that's boundary keeping. We might call a modern phraseology around that would be boundary keeping. We want to be inclusive of everyone, but in our tradition, everybody that works with children has to follow safeguarding God's children rules. Everybody who works with children has to be background checked. So as an example, we're not going to let somebody that fails a background check work with our children. So that's the casting out, holding an arm out, not because we don't love somebody, but because we want to protect the vulnerability of the flock. Does that make sense?
It's interesting that the church followed the state in this respect.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
We should have been leaders.
We should have been leaders there. I think we've followed the culture in several different ways in terms of our inclusivity. We're doing that currently with transgendered people. We did that with gay and lesbian and bisexual people before. The culture was before us. And even with women's ordination, the culture was before us. So we've been kind of swinging and missing in terms of being a prophetic voice. But part of that is the big tent thing that I've just been talking about. We have so many different perspectives in the Episcopal Church, which makes us great in so many ways, but we also have to have that prophetic edge, or I think we're falling even into the more retrograde parts of our culture that want to just keep things as they've always been, which I don't think Jesus was always a fan of. Jesus warns them that mission will involve this vulnerability and resistance. So, not easy, the work that you're being asked to enter into. Again, I believe it really would be best if it came with this warning label. So, all right, let's look at some crucial Greek words. Bronson, would you be kind enough to help me with these pronunciations today?
Esplanethe?
Yeah, esplanethe. He had compassion. So the word, I know the word in Latin where we get compassion. So passion means suffer, and come means with.
Splaying has to do with the gut.
Splaying has to do with the gut, so a feeling of some sort of gut instinct. So splay, that part, gut. It's good to know. So yeah, deep within him, his compassion is embodied. It's not just an intellectual kind of, oh, I can understand from your perspective. It's going there emotionally with someone and allowing your heart to break with somebody else's heart. Which is why I find pastoral care really challenging, because, I go there with people and I don't know how to get out of that place a lot of the time. My boundary keeping in pastoral care is abysmal. And so I kind of get burnt out in pastoral care, which makes me frustrated, but it's kind of who I am and why I need help with our pastoral care.
You can turn to your mentor,
Yeah. Yes.
pastor.
Well, and that's where I'm really grateful for our new bishop. He is a pastor. That's his heart, and so I'm really looking forward to working with him. So, and therapist. Those are, I can't overvalue therapy. Suffering with somebody, not just in a superficial way. That's what Jesus does, and that's what we're invited into, and that's not easy. And some of us are gifted in it, and some of us can only do it, to a certain capacity. All right, what's that next phrase?
Skominoi.
Skominoi?
Erimenoi.
All right, harassed and helpless.
It almost sounds that way, doesn't it?
What?
The word is really harass.
Harris.
It's not harass.
Okay.
Why we're talking about harass.
Harris. Okay. I like, yes. Yes, the British pronunciation.
It's French.
Like, oh, it's French.
It's
Okay.
French, it's harass.
No. Pronunciation is still British.
So, pronunciations aside, the crowds are just, Jesus has moved to this compassion because of the way that they're expressing themselves. So this makes me think about when somebody in our community starts acting out, and what does our community do to a person who is acting out in whatever way they're acting out? Could be, I'm going to reduce my pledge. Could be, I don't want to come to this church anymore. Could be sabotaging something. Instead of blaming them and saying, how awful are you? I wonder if we can ask the question, what's going on? How are you feeling left behind? How are you feeling harassed and helpless? And is there something we can do to come alongside you as a community to support you? So that's a culture shift that I'm hoping we can kind of make here. It doesn't.
We may get a big chance to do that. The Southern Baptist Church has now said there can be
No women. No women.
No women that are called pastor, no women preacher.
Nope.
Women have been exiled from any leadership in the Southern Baptist Church.
Yeah.
Now, how logical is that?
Well, no, it's anti-scriptural.
Very logical if you accept literal
If you believe
interpretation.
that.
Yeah, it does not conform to scripture as we interpret it.
That's
No.
right.
So, all right, bye. Y'all have had enough.
No, you never get enough here.
Okay, great.
So I just have to move on to the next one.
Yes. All right. So we're gonna wrap things up in the next 10, 15 minutes, but keep going.
When you invite someone to let their hair down,
Yeah.
that scares that someone half to death.
Yes. Because they don't know where to put the anger, and then when you give them a place to kind of vent, what are they going to do with the anger? Like, because maybe it subsides, and maybe that's been the motivating thing. Especially, just going to call out men. We deal with sadness by turning it into anger, and so we become angry, and then when we have a place to put the anger and maybe process it, then we have to sit with whatever that underlying sadness is about our lack of power, our lack of ability, our lack of capacity, our lack of, control. There's a great prayer by Thomas Keating called the Welcoming Prayer that invites people to, I let go of my desire for power and control. I let go of my desire for affection, esteem, approval, and pleasure. I let go of my desire for survival and security. What a radical prayer to be praying. But it's what I pray before I do centering prayer, when I do centering prayer. Because I need to move out of the way.
You have to be brave to say that.
Yes.
Sincerely.
Yes. And sometimes I don't. But the roteness kind of carries me sometimes into the place of depth. So yeah, we're called not to just cast those people aside, but instead to give them a place. And I think that's what Jesus is trying to do. He's almost like, I can't deal with all this pastoral care. Guys, y'all gotta go out there and listen to how people are experiencing problems in our world. Because, right then the political and religious structure were intertwined. Does that sound a little familiar to where we are right now? Part of our religious structure is now being so intertwined with one of our political parties that it just is, it's hurting my soul. It's hurting my heart. Because I believe as a country, we need the diversity of religious expression involved in all of the different political parties that we have. Otherwise, how are we having conversations across the divide? We're not. We're just building up our echo chambers. And that's a critique of both the left and the right, and possibly the middle. But I consider myself in the middle, and I feel like I'm just doing this, dodging the shots fired between different sides right now.
That's the hardest place to be.
It is. The radical middle. The radical middle is what we're starting to call it, and my young clergy friends, we're calling it, trying to stay in the radical middle. All right, so the last thing is this kind of, fitting thing for us, right? Apostolos, apostle, one who is sent. Y'all know that. I've been trying to say it almost, bi-weekly so that it'll stick with us. But that set apart and sent is what our name means. discipleship becomes apostleship. So Jesus calls these people, lets them into his ministry, and then sends them out to share in the ministry. So it's not, hey, come and get spiritually fed, and then, your comfortable, convenient life can continue. No, now you're called to go out and do something that's scary, by meeting those people who are hurting, who are harassed, who are on the margins of society, saying, this country has left me behind, or this way of being has left me behind. It doesn't always have to be blamed on our country. It could just be blamed on the larger culture, right? Any questions before we move into the world in front of the text, which we've really covered a lot of this. So we'll just very briefly touch over this. All right, so current hearing. I feel like the people, maybe y'all feel harassed and helpless, but generally when I speak to y'all, that's not how you present. Maybe we're irritated about something going on in our national discourse. But generally speaking, I don't wonder where my meals are coming from, and I don't know many in our congregation that wonder that. I don't really worry about people in our congregation having health care. So if we start to think about the ones that do have those professions, and there's definitely some among us who, quietly suffer through a job loss and are in transition and are trying to keep up the appearance, and I really wish we were a place that didn't care about any of that, and could help people to put that guard down. But we're not there. But maybe the way to get there is by going out and being the church to people who are feeling helpless. So people like immigrants. We do provide a space for the dementia care group that used to be at Discovery. They'll go back to Trent when it's Trinity, whatever they're calling it, Trinity Hoover, or whatever it's going to be. Our neighbors are being franchised by the Trinity that's in Homewood and West Homewood and now Hoover, which is a great church. I love Brian Erickson, but I think we'll lose that group. So it's an opportunity. Do we want to continue something that would be a caregivers group for people who are, tending to somebody with dementia or have a special needs adult child or something like that? Because there's people in our community like that. So it doesn't always have to be helpless in terms of a monetary position. Immigrants, I know Jose's ministry. We all love Jose, but his ministry is leading him in that direction, and there's some really powerful things that we could partner with him on. But we just, we haven't gone there. But I think that's something that we could dive into if we felt called. I know that becomes a politicized thing, but it's really not as a Christian. There's really no justification for not welcoming the stranger in whatever way we can. Even if we believe in a legal process towards immigration, I think we should care for anybody that comes in. We're supposed to be a sanctuary. The sick, we do have those among us. That's an area where we're pretty good. The grieving, we're in the midst of starting a pilot grief group right now, and first session went really well. Exhausted workers, we don't have as many of those. We don't have a lot of blue collar workers among us, but maybe that's an area that we grow into. And then finally, kind of this civilians who are caught in violence. That is less in our neighborhood, but we don't have to go that far to get to Bessemer. We don't have to go that far to get to Fairfield or Inslee or Center Point, places, north side of Birmingham where things are not as safe, not as kind of protected. And that changes how you see the gospel. If you're ministering to people in all those different places, the gospel is going to feel like a lifeline. It's going to feel like a life preserver instead of an add-on that guides you spiritually. Right?
I felt so good about the fact that Bessemer requires acceptable grades and attendance to then
Be
be
a part.
trained as
Yes.
a pilot.
Yeah.
I mean, these guys graduate high school with a license.
Yes. I love that. Yes.
It's brilliant. In
So-
that location, they bring him in from Jefferson County.
Yes,
schools.
air pilot. So it's now the Alabama School for Aviation or high school for aviation, and so they graduate all these kids that are ready to go into primarily the Air Force, but Navy, Army as well.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's a great example of something that's working right in our community.
It's made my neighborhood a little bit louder, but that's okay. I live near the airport, and so there's a lot.
Yeah,
Yeah.
the best marine report. Yeah. So, all right, let's keep going. I realize we're almost out of time. Compassion cannot remain a feeling. That's a great place to start, but it's like worry. Have you all ever heard that expression? Worry is like sitting in the rocking chair. You can do it all day long, but you're not going anywhere. Same with this. You can have compassion all day long, but until it turns into action, what are we actually doing but navel gazing? And, Mother Teresa used to talk about that. Pity without action is nothing.
It's toxic.
It's toxic, exactly. And that's, if I've subtly been critiquing the right, the left is really guilty of that. That is a sin that, progressive American Christians need to repent of, because we can be identifying with all these causes and not doing a darn thing about it. And I mean I do mean money, but I also mean, how are we putting our money where our mouth is, and how are we putting our lives where our beliefs are? And that's not an easy thing. Jesus gives us authority, but not to dominate. I think that's a really critical thing we have to say to one another right now. I'm really gravitating in my daily devotion towards the Magnificat, which might as well be called Down with the Dominators. The people that want to control everything and control everyone. And that is not holy. It's not from God. And I think we as a church could be more, like I'm talking Big C church, could be more vocal in pointing to the words that Mary sang out, because they convict us too. We're sometimes the ones that are powerful that need to be thrown off our thrones. So he gives us power to heal, to restore things, to bring things into alignment with God's true way, and then not to control others in the process. And then the church is sent to embody mercy in really concrete ways. So these are 2 questions y'all can hold this week. Who are the harassed and helpless near us? And where is Holy Apostles being sent? And you could also answer these when you're on vacation, when you're maybe helping with some summer project. We're being invited to help with a project at the Abbey, where they're doing a kind of summer camp. It's called the Way Out program, and it's a pilot program that Susan Oakes, who's the chaplain to the Abbey, is taking on. And so that might be a way that compassion manifests for us.
So what is their agenda? How will they be doing that?
So it's a Tuesday morning commitment, which, that's not great for us, this group. But perhaps maybe one time this summer we could suspend Bible study and go be Christ's hands and feet in this program, and see how that goes. And maybe study the Bible while we're doing it. How crazy would that be? So that looks like we would just be there as volunteers. They do not need financial support. They do not need programmatic support. We just show up and kind of follow the...
Snacks.
They do need snacks.
Which you can be reimbursed for.
Yes, that's right. So that's a way. Where do we need to travel lighter? Where do we need to put things down? I'm calling this my summer of simplicity, and I'm going through a lot of my actual physical things to put them away, to give them away, to make my life less complicated. And I extend that invitation to you.
Yeah, and I verse for something that you contribute to Abby it seems contradictory.
Well,
Sure.
it's just that
They offer it,
Yeah.
and I think it's a grant from the
Yeah, it's
diocese
Yeah, I think they're diocesan.
supported.
Good
They
support.
are. They are.
They deserve it.
All right, very quick connections. This is one of the best stories in Genesis. It's the hospitality of Abraham under the oaks of Mamre. We have an icon that is probably, the first icon that you think of when you hear icon. It's called the hospitality of Abraham. It's the three figures that are sitting around a table leaning into one another, and there's the open space. Now, those are the three visitors that come to meet Abraham, but we read into that's the Trinity, that's who are the folks that are entering into that. Psalm is about thanksgiving for deliverance, and then it's a powerful thing. I would just invite you to read it. It's kind of this take on what we do when we are there at Eucharist, being the response to the mercy we receive. So we go confess, on Sunday, confession, absolution, Eucharist. And it's intentionally in that order, except when we do the penitential order in Lent. And then Romans, so we were sick, and yet Christ died for us. Some of that language is troubling because sinfulness can be loaded language. I just want to remind y'all, as Episcopalians, sin means distortion of relationship. It doesn't mean a certain set of rules that we nitpick each other on. There's certain absolutes that, yes, we can all agree it is wrong to murder. It is wrong to commit adultery. It's wrong. We can hold up these things as virtues that we hold on to. But it doesn't mean that anyone's outside the reach of God's grace, even when they violate something that we hold as a hard and fast kind of commandment that we've received from God. All right, going back to Sodom and Gomorrah, because I told y'all that, and I want to return to it. So often the interpretation of Sodom and Gomorrah is this is speaking out against homosexuality, and it is not. It actually has very little to do with homosexuality. There is, the wording is very graphic. You can go back and read that story if you want to. I'm not going to rehearse it here. But the story is truly about hospitality. It's about making room for people when they come to be with you. And so for Lot and his family, they came into Sodom and Gomorrah to try to be received and to proclaim the good news. And instead, there was knocking at the door, there was kidnapping, there was rape, all of this terrifying stuff. And yes, some of that was men doing horrible things to other men. But it's more, the condemnation is more the violation of relationship, the violation of hospitality. Instead of receiving someone, responding to them with domination and violence. That's what the God of Abraham, Isaac, Jacob, the God that is Jesus and the Holy Spirit, is condemning, still condemns to this day. And so, at least for my formation as a priest, that was the ethical logic that was used when approaching this as what we call a troubling text that tries to exclude some of our siblings in the faith. So we could talk all day about that, but I just wanted to give that kind of an earmark, or just that's something we can return to. But if somebody comes up to you and uses that as one of the texts that is a proof text, you can respond to them by saying, no, that's a misinterpretation of that. That was one of the consequences of the sinfulness. It was the type of sinfulness, but it was not a sin in and of itself. The distortion of the relationship was the sin. All right, that makes sense?
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Well, we're going to stop the recording. Thanks for being with us. hope I don't get defrocked over some of my comments today. But hope you will enjoy this. Those who are joining later on our YouTube page, and we're going to close in prayer in the room.